All right, looks like we're all set. You guys hear me okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. This is my third year at Mac Admin's, first time speaking. I'm in IT, I don't speak a lot. So bear with me. If we get a little off track or my nerves, we'll come back around. Other than that, we'll get right into it. So we'll give you a little background about who I am. My name is Nic Scott. I'm the senior Apple admin for Kenyon College. Kenyon is a small liberal arts school in rural Gambier, Ohio. It's an absolutely beautiful campus. We're typically one of those schools that is on those very objective list of most beautiful college campuses. I think Forbes had us at number 2 last year. It's disgustingly perfect. The architecture, the campus, it's beautiful. If you've ever seen the movie Liberal Arts, filmed on campus, it gives you a good idea. A lot of the slides will have, a picture of just a random building on campus. My professional interests include Bash, Python, Ruby, automation, forensics. Those are sort of the things that I geek out on Saturday night on the couch, like all good admins. Personally, I'm into breakfast sandwiches. I walk a little faster than the average person, and I like sarcasm. So that's pretty much me. You don't need to know anything else. That's it. Here's how you can find me. I'm pretty low profile online, honestly. If you had a question, you need to get a hold of me. Email is just the best way. The slides will be posted on my blog afterwards. So all the links, everything will be up there. Give you a roadmap of where we're going. We're kind of going to answer this question of, do we have to care? We'll go over some basics of logs, and then we'll start from the machine level, and we'll kind of go up to centralized logging, and we'll take a look at what that is. And then we'll kind of step back and say, what do we do with all this information? Can we actually do something productive with it now that we know all this? And hopefully you'll leave with something productive. Not everybody's going to go back and fire up a log server and start visualizing logs. Hopefully you'll leave with something that is either new, it'll remind you of something you used to know, and you'll go, oh yeah, I'll follow up on that. And a lot of this is stuff you'll be able to just pull up on your terminal. You can look at your logs. We'll go over some auditing, and hopefully you'll leave with something. So do we have to care? Well, maybe it's no. Maybe you don't. I don't know why you're here then. But maybe it's not required in your environment. Maybe you guys resolve problems before you have to that deep into the logs. Or maybe the solution is just reload the machine. I've been in those environments. I've worked for Fortune 100 companies, and there's a problem, reload it, because IT is about economics, and we can't afford for the machine to be down. And that's hard when you're first starting out, because you want to dive in, you want to fix the problem, and you have a supervisor says, look, we've just got to reload this, and the problem just goes away. And you can go years without looking at logs. I mean, I'm proof of that. It's more of, you work in that corporate environment, and the emphasis isn't there, right? It's on the efficiency and the productivity. And they're there if we ever need them. We don't typically dive into them. But maybe it's yes. I was hoping it's a little more of a rhetorical question. Of course we care, right? Because we're good admins. But maybe it's required. Maybe you work in an industry that is regulated. Maybe you provide support for a product, and logs are the way you debug. Maybe you build something, you're a developer, you are responsible for reports. Or you just enjoy monotonous gibberish because that's the kind of geek you are. It is a Wednesday mid-morning session about logs. You volunteered to be here. So I don't know what it says about you. Maybe you're just that type. Either way, logs are important, right? They provide admins a way to troubleshoot issues. They help us build reports. It's the foundation of auditing. And of course, logs are the narrative. I mean, if you're imaging 10 machines, 100, 1,000, 10,000, they walk out the door, they're the same. I guarantee you in a month, they're all different. They're all unique machines now. The only way you know what's happened to that machine is through the logs. You know who has user accounts. You know what's been installed. You know what's been changed. Logs are the narrative of that machine. They tell us what's going on. So how I ended up in the logs? Well, like every good rapper, I got problems, right? I gotta figure out things. I've got machines taking too long to log in. I've got students who can authenticate on one machine and not the other. I've got print jobs not going to the print server, MDM profiles not updating over the air. I've got monkey and puppet errors. And of course, the dreaded, who upgraded that machine to El Capitan in the middle of the semester? It was not me, so we got problems. So let's talk about logs. We'll go over Apple System Logs, Auditing Logs. We'll do a quick overview of the console app, and we'll look at some of these configuration files. But first, log. To find a definition, I kind of like this one. This was number 2 out of Webster's, and it refers to a ship's log. But simply, it's an official record of events. So we'll touch on some issues later on that, you know, we're used to thinking of logs in terms of system logs, but it doesn't have to be a system log. It just has to be an official record of events. That could be pulled back from a script. You're getting information back out. It tells you something has happened. It's static. At that time, this is what was on the machine. So just keep that in mind here and try not to get tied down into you know, the only system logs. We'll try to break out of that. So Apple System Logs and Syslog. Right, so Apple System Logs ASL is a daemon. Launches at boot, the path system library launch daemons. They're stored in varlog ASL. Some of those logs are written to varlog system log. ASL manages, rotates those out. You don't have to do any of that. That's built into the OS. Most of us have never heard of ASL. It handles all of this. ASL logs are binary. So you can't just go to that folder, varlog ASL, and double click. It's gibberish, right? So we can use something to view them. Syslog or console app converts that on the fly for us. General system logs. When we think of system logs, this is probably what we're thinking about is this folder, right? var log. If you go there on your machine now, you'll see directories, files for all sorts of things. This is the general location for applications and processes to write log files. It's not the only one. It's sort of best practice, I would say, right? If you were developing an application or even a script, this is a great place to dump your log files. Now, you've probably got multiple files in there. You'll see them with the extension .gz. Those are the compressed out. So whatever your retention policy is, by default, it might be 5 megabits for a syslog file. It hits that limit, it compresses, and it saves it until the machine deletes it ultimately. Syslog. It's a command line utility for a variety of tasks relating to Apple System Log. Provides mechanisms for sending and reviewing log files, copying log messages to ASL format data store files, and for controlling the flow of log messages from the client processes. Okay, here's what we need out of that. We're going to use it to view log files, and we're going to use it to convert binary into plain text. It does some more stuff than that. You can read the man page for it, but quite simply, this is what we want. So you can use console to view your logs, or you can use syslog. And if you wanted to see, say, the last 5 lines of your system log, you can open up terminal and type syslog-w5. If you wanted to see the last 10, just change the 5 out to 10, whatever you want to see. This is just an example, right? It'll vary. You'll get output like this. Here's some more examples. So if we wanted to use Syslog to read an ASL file, right, which is binary again, so we're going to convert it. You're going to run sudo userbin syslog-f for file, and you're going to point it to that ASL file. It's going to come back just like it did in the previous example, just line items right in your terminal. If you want to do something a little more with a quicker payoff, we could see all the Sudo usage. This is something that I do routinely on my lab machines. Students do not have admin rights, so if Sudo is being run, I want to know about it because somebody upgraded to El Capitan. So you can run sudo userbin syslog-k sender, so the process of sudo. Anything that sudo is running, we want that sender to show us the output. You'll get feedback, again, pretty quickly right in the terminal. Or if you want to filter based on the severity of the message. If you only want to see errors or alerts or emergency messages, we can use this bottom example where we're going to do the -k level NLE2. That'll show us critical messages. Now, if you wanted to see something else, this is the general severity logging level. You can type in any of these numbers, place it out with 2. If you wanted to see alerts, you would just put 1 instead of the 2. You can also just put in alert or critical. It'll take either one. Generally, you'll see it with the number instead. Console app. We'll give console a little love here. We use it to view log files, right? It's in the utilities folder. We can search, we can filter, we can do a command I on an individual log file. We can get a little bit more detailed information about that log. We can reveal those logs in the Finder. We could save them if we needed to. We found what we're looking for. Let's export it out. Let's make a copy. Or we can create a custom query. So we'll just go through. We'll open this up. We'll just do a simple search, right? We want to see all failures. So it'll filter out all the noise. We get what we want. And then we can kind of filter out from there. We can dig through and find what we're looking for. Pretty straightforward. If we chose one of these individual log files and did a command I, we would get a box with a little bit more detail. It would tell us the host name of the machine, the sender, the program that's creating this log. This is Safari. It would give us the message, the timestamp. This is the format that basically all centralized logging has to use. It pulls these logs back. These are static fields. They're pretty universal. They're standard. So when you start visualizing, say, senders, what senders are creating the most logs, it's just filtering on this sender field. If we want to get a quick view on our machine, if you open console and click the little triangle in the bottom left, you'll see senders, and it gives you just a very quick sort of visual cue of, on your machine, what is generating the most logs. You can click tags as well. So I've got a lot of Safari. I've got some Google Drive issues. And maybe they're not issues. Maybe it's just noise. Maybe it's routine. If you don't know, forming a baseline is always extremely important with logging, right? You want to start and see everything, get used to the fact that a good machine doesn't mean there are no logs. You're not going to find that machine. But what you want to do is get used to, these are fairly normal. I'm not too worried about them. Let's move on. So these don't typically worry me. But if we wanted to create a custom search, while we're in console, we would just go up to File, New System Log Query. And again, I want to do a quick search basically for Sudo Usage here. So I can just see it right in the left sidebar. So I choose the sender equal to sudo. If you save that, you're going to get it right in the sidebar. Super convenient. Now this is just a one-off machine, right? So do you want to set this up on every machine? No, maybe not. But maybe you've got a server that's running. Maybe you got a test machine. You could basically set up any kind of query you wanted here one time and have quick access. Now we got lots of other logs, basically. On the left-hand side, if we click down on var log, it just goes down. What's in there, right? There's lots of stuff, but there's some things that are worth looking at. So if you click on account policy, this contains information about authentication events. So you want to think here things like logins, screen locks, when you wake your machine back from sleep, those kinds of authentication. Under that you have authd, same thing, contains information about authentication events, but this is a little different. You want to think here more, if you read through these logs, you're going to see a lot of frameworks. This is a lot of like lower level things that have to be elevated to run. These are mainly system things. You're not typically going to see a user login record here. These are more things hands off. Commerce, App Store activity. You want to see what's been purchased, what's been downloaded. You can check this log out. Also, Apple or software updates. If you have something that's been updated from the App Store, you'll see that activity here. Cups, printing information, pretty standard. Installs is what it is, software installs, but it's more the traditional install, not the App Store activity. Think more of like DMG installs, PKGs, things you're double clicking. If you were running it from the command line, you would see that kind of activity in this log. System, general system, catch-all. That's what we think of, right? When we think of system logs, it's this system.log file. App firewall. This is the firewall on your machine. So whenever you open an application, it says, do you want to make an exception for this? And you click yes. It's going to log that here. So you'll see a lot of like Dropbox. I've got some Apple remote desktop. If you have a BitTorrent, it's going to log that here because it's opening those ports up, and then when you close it, it's closing them back down, and you'll see that opening ports, closing, listening, connecting. And then you can create custom logs. This is kind of cool, right? So on the right-hand side, I've just got a file I've created, test.log. There's nothing special about it. It's just plain text. You can put whatever you want in there. You'll see it in the console on the left side bar, and it's what it is. It just displays this text. This is kind of neat because it kind of goes back to the idea of if you're going to create something and send the logs to var log, you could then view it in console. And it doesn't have to be a .log file. It can be a .txt, plain text. It'll read it here. So when you're scripting and you're directing output, or you're checking the status of a script, if you direct that back to var log, you've got an easy way, basically, to view it. Let's talk about auditing logs. So built into OS X is the basic security module, right? It was created by Sun. Apple gave it to McAfee. It's been reissued over the years. It's now open source, so it's now called OpenBSM. It's maintained by the Trusted BSD project. This is baked into your machine. You don't have to turn this on. You used to. It's there. This is a lot of what, if you are a regulated industry, if you're in government, you might leverage this a little bit more. Audit logs, they live in var audit. That's their home directory. They're named starttime.stoptime. So if you do an ls in the terminal of that directory, you'll get those long strings, starttime.stoptime. The current one will end with .notterminated, which is helpful. Logs are saved in binary, again, but instead of using system log or syslog to read these, we have a new tool called Audit. And we can filter those the same way we can, say, opening the console and doing a search. But we've got a command line tool for that called Audit Reduce. And there's some configuration files and etc security that we'll take a look at. So this is just an ls, basically, of the etc security folder. In purple are your files. You should have 5 in there. You've got audit class that maps events to readable names. So the example here is you'll have something along the lines of AP equals application. There's a long list in there. That's all that file is. It's just mapping. Basically, it's creating variables. You've got audit control, which is your policy and retention. We'll take a look at that a little bit later when we look at configuration files, so you can see how you can change your retention policy. Audit events, very similar to class. It maps readable names. So in this example, if you're in an audit log and you see AUE dash or underscore auth user, it's user authentication. There's a lot of stuff in this file. It's helpful if you kind of just redirect the output of that file to your desktop to a file. Just do like a cat, audit events, pipe it out to your desktop so that you can open it up, look at it. There's all sorts of stuff in here, logins, logouts, administrative events. Audit user, there should be a listing in audit user for every user on the machine. Doesn't matter if you're local, mobile, network account. In my file, it's got Nic Scott for my user account, and then it's tracking LO and AD. That's all that's in there. Those are just the abbreviations, basically, for login, logouts, and administrative events. So anything I do on my machine under those events is logged. So you can go in and customize that to capture more data if you need to, but that's the default. And then audit warn is just a shell script. It does some things. You can open up, you can read it. There's not anything sexy going on in there. It's more things like if the hard drive is under 5%, we're going to log a message to system log. You're not even going to see it on the desktop. There's no GUI for this. It just writes to system log, and you'll see the message. Warning, 5% disk drive. So unless you're monitoring machines, you would never see that anyways. What can audit do? Logins, logouts, authentications, mounts, reboots, password changes, SSH activity, or if you've got change mod or change own events going on, you can track all of that. You can see what times, who did it, and there's a lot more. Those are things that come out of those audit event files. So we'll do a quick example here with Audit. It's very straightforward. It prints the contents of audit trail files. So if you want to see all the activity on your machine, you would just run this command, sudo user bin audit -s var audit current. This could take a while to come back. This is not quick. You may have to sit for 3 to 5 minutes. Typically when I run this again, I run it and then I pipe it out to a file on my desktop. That way I can just sort of move on with my life and I've got it in a file and I can open it up. Now you have to run Audit with sudo. One, because you're trying basically to read out of an administrative directory. And also because standard users can't do this. Standard users cannot check the audit logs. It's just built-in security. So if you run this, you're going to get back a huge file. There's lots of noise going on in here. If you've never seen it, do it, right? Look at it because that's how you form your baseline. But you're going to get stuff like this, and this is pretty typical. You have the start of a record with a header, a subject, the text, the return, the trailer, moves on. What's important here is kind of highlighted in yellow. There's a log out, try to log in, purposely fail, you get a return failure. Type the password correctly, you get a verify password. For record user in Scott. It'll tell you right there. So if you've got failed logins on your machines, you can see it in the audit logs. Audit reduce. It allows you to select records out of audit files. So you can do a little bit more here of fine tuning, because again, if you just show all activity, you're going to wait for a minute, and then you're going to get back a ridiculous amount of information. So if you just wanted to see activity from the root user, you would do your sudo user bin audit reduce -e, which is for what user you want to see. We would pull in root. We would give it the path to the current audit file. And then we got to pipe it back out to audit, right? Because that's what converts it from binary to plain text. And you can see all root activity. You could put in any user you wanted instead of root, and you'll see those records. If you want to show authentication activity, you have to start switching out these back in the events, the audit events file. You would see these. In this case, it's AUE_auth_user. That's the tag, basically, right, for authentication. You can do logins, logouts. Again, you're basically just switching out whatever is in those audit files so that you can see logins, logouts. It's all time-stamped in there too. And there's so many more. I mean, you can type in, even if you just do on the last example, and you show all your activity and you go through it, you'll begin to see these sort of keywords and go, oh, well, maybe I want to filter just based on that. Configuration files. The three we really care about here are system logs, Apple system logs, and audit logs. These are the directories, or the files, actually. We'll look at each one kind of quickly. We'll show you what piece of that file you actually care about. Some of it we don't want to mess with. So Etsy syslog.confi, right? This is the default. All it's really doing here is saying we're sending everything to the loopback address, the local host, right? This is what sends everything to your system log. If you do centralized logging, you would add a second line here underneath this, where you would basically just put a wildcard and then the IP address or the server name of your log server. And it would make a copy. It would send one to the system log, and it would send one off to the log server. It's pretty straightforward. Etsy ASL.confi. Now there's a lot going on here. I know you can't read this, but this line in purple will blow up on the next slide because that's the retention policy. So hopefully you can see that a little bit better. And it'll say right above it, rules for var log system.log. So underneath, I've sort of got the keywords and what it actually means. The ones you're mainly concerned with are you can set the rotate date or the time on when things get compressed. You can set the max size of files, and you can set TTL, your time to live. So how long do you want to keep logs? This should be the default line. So if you see on the end, you've got file max of 5 megs. All logs hit 50 megs. You're going to keep those for 90 before it just deletes. On mine, I've doubled all of those. So I've got 10, 100, 180. So it creates more logs, which is more space, which isn't a problem if you've got a large hard drive, right? I think my var log folder is probably about 200 megs, and I've increased the retention policy. that's nothing. So on a lab machine with a terabyte drive, that's nothing. I don't care about it. If you set it as, if you want to keep logs for a year, I would say that's probably not something you want to roll out to your fleet unless you test. Maybe it's only a gig worth of files, which still in the scheme of things, it's not that much. But who knows what your users are doing to generate logs. This is my work machine, right? So it's not even my test machine. It's not my scripting machine. I don't run VMs on it. It's web browsers, right? Excel sheets. And I've got 200 megs in logs. If I was doing more, it might be more. This is Audit Control. So this is basically the configuration file for auditing. It's very similar to the last one, except instead of one line across, it's got it broken down. It's commented out with what they do. So some of the interesting things here, you've got flags, and by default, it's tracking LO, AA, AD. So I believe we've got logins, logouts, administrative events, and anything that is being escalated. There's so much more you could track if you wanted to. Again, that's going to create larger logs. So you just want to be careful of this. This is not something you want to just put in, hey, let's catch everything. You can do it on your machine. See what happens. You can set the minimum free percentage drive. So after, say, 5% of free disk space, we're not logging anymore. This is one I know in some government agencies, they'll say, like, no, if you fall under 5%, your machine is not working because we are not going without logging. They edit this file here. You can set the size, expiration, same things. It's worth playing around with. Machine logs. So we'll go over locations. We've already done this with the 3. I just wanted to add in user logs and application logs. User logs in your home directory, you'll see a lot of Adobe updaters, Google updating. There's not a lot of applications that are logging there. Same for application logs. You'll probably see something from Google, maybe some Adobe. For the most part, again, best practice would be to send it up to var log. That's where you would expect to find them. So what to look for? We've got these directories. We know where they're at. We can now read them. We can convert them from binary to plain text. We can use Syslog. We can use ProAudit. What are we looking for? We've seen some examples, but here's just some keywords, right? These are pretty standard. We want to see success, failures, created, deleted. If you wanted to get a little more obscure, if you wanted to see VPN activity, you would search for raccoon. That's the daemon that controls VPN. Bluetooth would be blued. Enable root, disable root. Again, if you see that, you should go check that machine out. If you didn't enable root on that machine, you're going to want to know why that is in your logs. If you want to see VNC or Apple Remote activity, you would search for screen sharing D. You can search for Apple IDs if you want to see who's logged in. You'll get a callback of the actual Apple IDs. In labs, it's always interesting to see what students feel like. Hey, not a problem. I'm just going to sync everything down to a lab machine. That's neat. I guess that's cool. Kerberos, if you want to see time machine backed up D, install. If you went to the actual install log in console and searched for installed, you would actually see the application starting that install process. Sudo, root, right? So we'll talk quickly here about logger. It makes entries in the system log. It's very easy, very straightforward. It does what it says it does. If you open terminal and you type logger, and whatever you put in quotes, go open your console. It's going to be the last line in your system log. It's going to timestamp it. It's going to tell you what user just sent that to the logs. This is kind of neat. You can use this sort of in your own scripting if you want to keep track of what you're doing. Maybe your IT department comes up with some keywords that says, if somebody in our department is going to run a script, let's add this line so that we can track it. We can say starting script here, whatever it is. It just spits it right out. Greg Nagel actually showed this in the packaging workshop where he uses it to help debug variables. He'll just echo them back out with logger and say echo variable whatever, hits it to the system log just so he can kind of check up to make sure it's returning the value that he wants. So an easy example, if we're going to turn the firewall on, we're going to say logger turning firewall on. You're going to see that in the system log, and then we're going to run the command. You could get a little more in depth here. You could actually say logger and then have it check the status of the firewall, return that, run your command, have it check it again. All of that would be logged to system log, and you would actually see that it was off and we ran the command and turned it on. We'll talk about redirection quickly as an overview, just as some examples. I use this all the time. We'll redirect standard output. So the first example, we're taking basically the output of the ls command, right, and we're sending it to a text file. It can be named whatever you want, .txt. It's going to drop it in my home directory here because that's the path, that log file. You can drop it anywhere you want. And instead of outputting that onto the terminal, you're going to see that in the file. So the second example is the same, except you've got two angled brackets. So we're appending the file. We don't want to write over it. So if we've already got information in there, we're just going to add it on the bottom and continue to add. So if you're doing something in your own logs and you're redirecting that output, you probably want to append it because you don't want to write over it every single time you do something. You want to keep a log, actually, of what scripts were run. If you wanted to redirect standard error, you would do the two angled brackets, send it somewhere. This won't catch standard output. So if you run ls this way, you'll get it back in the terminal, and you'll only get error messages in the error log file. It's an easy way you could separate out. If the command runs, great. But if it doesn't run, I want to know why. Let's catch it over here. If you wanted to do both, ampersand, angled bracket. And you'll see this one quite a bit on the bottom here where we're redirecting both output and errors to dev null, which is just it's a black hole, right? Whatever you send there, it just goes away. Sometimes if you have a noisy script, you have to redirect your command to dev null. Every once in a while you'll see some Adobe install scripts that reference dev null. Apple themselves, I believe it was System Profiler with Yosemite. If you ran it, it complained on the command line. It ran, it did what it was supposed to do, but it would kick back an error. And to get rid of the error, just to clean it up, you just redirect it to dev null. Script runs, everything's fine. So then we'll talk about sort of adding these two things together, this idea of creating custom logging and redirecting. So it's a simple bash script, right? We set up the logging. We set up a custom log path, a custom log file. We make the directory, we create the file, we touch the file. So we've got a folder inside library with a file called admin logs. Everything I do, I'm going to redirect to admin logs. So if there's an issue on our machines, I know we can look there, we can see what's happened. You can start your script, and you can echo out whatever you want. So in that log file, if you open it up, all it's going to say is configuring system preferences, and it's going to give me a date timestamp. Now, you would continue that pattern, right? So any command you run, you could output the or redirect the output of that command. So you can say, hey, we're going to touch some system preferences here. This is what we're going to touch. This was the status. We ran our command. This is the result. You've got a log, basically, of what's happened. So if you put this into a script and run it with like Deploy Studio, on the end of your file, or on the end of your workflow, you install an image, you do some packages, you run a script with some custom logging and redirection. You can kind of see, basically, it's a post-flight script, right? You can see this is what we have done to this machine. So back to the firewall example, it's pretty simple, right? We're going to echo configuring firewall, goes to the log file, date goes to the log file, and then we mix in a little logger, so we get that into the system log. So you can mix these together. So we're going to create our own log over here of what we've done, but I also want to make sure we've updated sort of the system log, so we can say, hey, who turned this firewall off? Oh, the line above it would tell you, hey, we're working on the firewall here. Now, if you don't want to mess with redirection, and you just want to say, everything in this script, I want to output to somewhere else, you can use exec. Put it at the top of your script. So this is pretty easy here. This is just doing basically an ls of the current of my directory, right, or of this log. But I'm just redirecting the one thing. So exec everything. Give me logs, or give me the output and the errors to the log file. Anything you run after that, you could run 100 commands. They're all going to go back to the log file. So it's a global variable, basically, to say, everything we're doing, I want to catch it. The next script you run that doesn't have exec goes back to normal. Everything goes back to system log, and you're not changing anything by using exec. And the last one about redirection is T. So if you're saying, well, I want it in the system log, right? Because I don't want to take information out of there, but I also want it in our log. You can use T. So this will do an ls, again, of the directory, post everything. It'll show you that output in your terminal, so you visually see the results of the command. And it'll make a copy to your log file. So you can T any command you want, basically, and it'll keep normal functions, and it'll also output that to your log file. So we'll change gears a little bit here. We'll talk about collecting logs. And mainly here, system and user logs. So this is just a bash file. All right, it's hard to read up there. It's kind of dark. They're on my GitHub. The link is at the beginning of the slides. It's also at the end. It's very straightforward. All it's really doing is it's creating a collection folder. You can put it anywhere you want. It'll make a copy of var log folder. It'll loop through the users and pull out their user logs. If you're troubleshooting a machine, you could just tie in a USB, click this out, create the collection folder back on the USB drive, collect everything, put it there. It's pretty straightforward. Now there's a line on the bottom that changes the permissions to everybody read write, just so you collect these log files back, you have them, you can open them up and read write. If you're doing it for more of a legal or forensics type of incident response, don't change the permissions. You don't want to change anything, so you would just comment that line out. But it's going to look like this, basically. It's a collection folder. Every user is going to get a folder, and it's going to say logs, and it's going to copy their logs, and then you've got syslog, and it's got everything in there. It's just a quick, sort of easy, dirty way to get the logs off the machine. You can take them back, you can search through them, you can do whatever you want. Sis Diagnose. If you've ever opened a bug report with Apple, more than likely what's going to happen is you're going to wait and wait and wait, and they're going to come back and say, we need more information. Could you run Sis Diagnose for us? Yeah, you're going to send them the output of it. It collects a lot. It's overkill for what you probably want. Kernel extensions, kernel zones, spin dumps, crashes, I/O, registry information. But one of the side effects is it collects logs. It's very easy to run. Sudo user bin Sis Diagnose -F, send the results to the desktop. It's going to create a nice little folder for you. If you only want log data and not everything else, you don't want the kernel extensions, you would just throw in the -D flag. It's a little less, but you're going to get a lot. And by a lot, this is the output of the folder. You don't care about most of this. Now, it's interesting. If you've never seen it, there's some interesting things going on. There's quite a bit, but all the way buried in there is a directory called logs. You know, like I said, it's overkill. If you open logs, you're basically going to get system logs. You just get all this other stuff with it. It's worth running to kind of see what happens here. It takes a while, again, to generate. This isn't quick and easy. You're going to wait to collect all this information, but it's worth doing if you've never seen it, just to kind of get an idea of what Apple is looking at. Or there's some very cool scripts. This is OS X Auditor. It's actually a forensics tool. It's a Python script. There's the link. It's very easy. It aggregates all the logs from these directories, var log, library logs, user logs. Does the same thing sort of as my script. It creates a collection folder, OS X Auditor report, computer name, timestamped, and it'll give you library logs, user logs, var log. That's the example up there. It's very easy. Sudo path to the Python script, -A-Z. I don't recall what those flags do. You would have to do osauditor.py help, I think, to get the full list of flags. And then you just give it a destination. It does the rest. There's some other cool tools out there that do the same thing. OS X Collector is another one that Yelp created to do forensics. There is Mac Response LE, and there's one called Live Response Collection Allosaurus. They all do similar things. The links are at the end and the resources. Most of them are basically Python scripts that you run just a one-off command. It collects back. Again, it's kind of neat to run them to see what it collects. I wouldn't go out running them on your users. Some of them are a little more invasive, and it'll pull back things like Firefox history, Chrome history, because they want the forensics aspects of it. If you start doing that to your end users, your results might vary. All right, centralized logs. We'll go over first the benefits of centralized logs. This is pretty straightforward, I think. It's right, you're centralizing them. You're getting all your logs in one location, so it makes it very easy to search, and it's so much quicker to get the information. And of course, retention. This is probably one of the best features here. If machine logs are going to delete, whatever your retention policy is, they're going to hit that max file size, they're going to hit that max time to live, they're going to delete. So if you have an incident you need to go back and look at, chances are by the time you get to that machine, those logs are gone. This way, you can retain them for as long as you want. If you were in Daniel Grigg's session yesterday about defensible systems, he made a few subtle references to centralized logging and basically saying it's so important because you have to get the information off the machine. And that's the goal here. If something were to happen or we need to see information, it's got to get off the machine. We want that information. So I'm going to talk about ELK, which is just a stack for Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Cabana. It doesn't have to be ELK, so don't get hung up on that. If you have Splunk or Graylog or Loggly or some other system, that's fine. What's more important here is sort of the ideas, not the tool itself. So visualization, right? This is the game changer of logs. When you start to visualize them and see these patterns, it really is, it's very cool. Okay, so Cabanas Dashboard looks like this. And in the top, you've got a Discover tab, a visualization, and a dashboard. But this is your main login, right? You've got a search bar on the top. You've got some options on the side. And up in this corner, you've got total logs. And above that, if you could see it, it'll say last 4 hours. So I'm only filtering the last 4 hours here. So there's about 107,000 logs in the last 4 hours. And this is them. This is all of them, and you can filter these. On the left sidebar, you can filter them down by host name, by message, by the program that's sending them, by the severity. There's lots of options. We can't get into all of them. But if you just wanted to do a quick search, we'll put in sleep, and that filters down to 33 hits over the last 4 hours, and every individual log you have is there. And these are logs, again, from Syslog. So if you remember back in the console, when we did a Command I, we got that box, and it gives you that information about individual log messages. That's what this is. It'll show you the host name, the sender of the log, the message, the severity level. It gets that detailed. So now you can start to see some white space and breaking up. Not much going on here. Like you can see on the left sidebar, it goes up to 8. So 8 logs is about the extent. These are probably just machines that are idle and they fall asleep. Somebody comes back in, wakes them up, just records it. You can search for whatever you want there. The search bar is, I want to say, Lucian, which is from Apache. So the syntax is a little different. It doesn't take regular expressions if that's what you're used to. It's pretty easy. There's lots of documentation on there. You can do multiple searches. So you could search for A and B, or A but not B. You just have to do a quick update on your syntax. If you wanted to create a visualization, you've got some options. You can do area charts and data tables, pie charts. The most popular probably is this bottom option, which is the vertical bar chart, which is the one that goes across. So we'll choose that. In the search bar, I just wildcarded. It's just everything. This is all logs for the last 24 hours, right? And then you've got some options. You've got X and Y access options. I don't typically mess with Y. X is on the bottom, right? So the first option we choose down is data histogram, which creates the individual bars because it shows you every bar has got a different timestamp. And then you can split that so the colors are split by host name. So then you can start to see what clients are generating the most logs. And then it'll tell you over here in the bar the actual host name of the machine, so you can match the color up. You can save this visualization almost like a widget. So when you expand it out, it looks sort of like this. So this was actually an example of one of my labs that got re-imaged during winter break. You see I've got no error messages, and then it goes up as I image the lab, and then it starts to go back down. This is why visualization is pretty cool, because I didn't realize what's going on. I'm checking machines into Puppet. Puppet is telling me you have certificate errors. These machines can't get certificates. I thought it was a one-off. Let's go look at it. I realized this is not a one-off. This is every machine in my lab, and it happened right as I started re-imaging. So I caught it about here, fixed the issue, and it starts to drop off. If I would have waited a couple more days, you would see it actually drop all the way off. But that was from going to one machine. That was from looking at my Puppet dashboard, seeing this error, going to that machine, looking at the system logs. This isn't right. This is the error I'm seeing on this machine, pulling it back to Cabana, putting it in, visualizing it, and going, this isn't one machine. This is everything. So some other helpful visualizations. This is software installs. You've got two circles, inner and outer. The inner are your client machines. The outer is how the software got installed. So there's three colors there. Let's see, purple is Sudo Usage. That's probably me or Monkey, just manually pushing something. Light blue is installed D, which is probably more of just PKGs, disk images. And the other one is App Store, and then the clients that are on there. And then you've got just a big counter. This is machines that downloaded El Capitan. You can do any custom search you want. So if there's any number in there, I got to go look at it. You can save these, and you can start to put all these visualizations together on dashboards. So this is a dashboard for Sudo Usage. These two charts are the same. This is just overall activity, so I can kind of see where it spikes. And that's the same activity. It's just broken down by host that's creating the commands. And then I'm actually looking at the commands and looking at the host. And it'll give you a count of, again, what machines are creating the most. If they're all in balance, maybe that's normal. Again, you have to get your baseline here. But my top client has 2,600. And my bottom has 15. That's sort of an imbalance I might want to go look at. And it'll tell you what's running. Like, it'll actually show you the command. It'll say user root command, whatever it was we're doing, and then the actual command. Most of those were generated from Puppet or Monkey, because they're running as roots. They're doing something. They're checking the status of a file for me. So my baseline is this is pretty normal. I don't see anything in here that I'm worried about. This is one for error messages. Same sort of idea, overall activity. I've got pie charts of errors, pie charts of critical errors, the top clients that are generating those, top programs. I've got Final Cut Pro generating a large amount of errors for some reason. Core Audio generates a lot of critical errors. That's our Apple TVs, where the fix is to restart them. Thanks, Apple. Sudo activity, same charts here again. So overall activity and then by client on the bottom. So you can take the same search that you use, so whatever you want to search by, and create multiple visualizations depending upon how you want to see that. So here's one about Sudo Usage where I actually pull out what's generating that. I've got 4,800 hits for Sudo because of Xcode. It's installed, and if you haven't opened Xcode to accept the user agreement, it's going to tell you, hey, you need to run Sudo. Well, because it says Sudo, it gets logged. It's kind of a false positive. But you see that and you go, oh my gosh, 4,800, and then you go look at it and go, oh, yeah, it's not that big a deal. So then underneath is me going to a machine and actually doing that from the command line, running that Sudo, whatever it is, Xcode build license, and it picks that up right away. This is the same sort of thing. So I filter my Sudo messages out. I know what my baseline is, and I exclude all those. So these are things that maybe are exceptions. So if they're on this list, I kind of eyeball them. And on the bottom, what's great is I've blocked out the user's name because it's a student. I've got a student running Sudo. Now they don't have rights to do that, but I can see exactly what command they're running on what machine. And they're trying to load Aqua Google Keystone Agent plist, which sounds like the update plist. I don't know what they're doing. They didn't do it, but it's interesting to be like, what are you doing? If you have to go have a talk with somebody, you can say, you did this, why? Examples of things that I have searched for in the past. Sending status, OSX, El Capitan. That's the first line in your install log when you download El Capitan from the App Store. It says sending status, and then you will get 1%, 2%, 3%. If you've never seen it, go download something from the App Store and pull up the commerce log. Apple ID, again, that'll pull back anybody that's logged into a machine with an Apple ID. I've got a lot of studio art machines, and so when we switched from Final Cut to Premiere, I was doing a lot of Premiere and crash because you get those frantic calls. It's not working on anything. You pull it up and you realize it actually is. It's this one machine because I can visualize this and see it's not every machine. You can pull out local user accounts. You can see people that have signed in. You can see how many times they've signed in, on what machines they've signed in. Again, Puppet and error messages, or Monkey insert error messages. You can search system versions to pull back what versions of machines you have. I'll say it's not great. There's better tools. If you have an inventory tool, it would do a better job of this. But you can get a rough idea if you search for system version 10.11 or 10.11.5, it would pull back unique host names and tell you you have 50. Starting download is another one of those sort of app store. You can kind of track what's being downloaded. We'll talk quickly about enrolling clients. It's very, very easy. Back to the etc sysconfig file, right? So we've just added a second line to that file. And actually, the @xxx, you would just put in either your DNS name or your IP address, and you would save that file, do a restart of that machine, and it'll automatically start forwarding logs. Now, this is only for Unix. If you were doing Linux or Windows, the process is different. So I do this with a bash script and put it in a deployment workflow for a lab. I just echo out whatever the name of our server is to the etc syslog confi. I unload the syslog daemon, so I don't have to do a restart. I sleep it for 2 seconds. That's just me being paranoid. I don't know that you have to sleep it. You could unload it and load it back, but this seems to work. And then I load the daemon up, and when the daemon comes back up, it starts forwarding logs. It's quick, it's easy, it works. That way I don't have to physically touch or even Apple Remote restart everything. All right, so now what? There's a lot of information there that we want to use to be informed about our fleet. We want to make better decisions. Maybe we want to be alerted, or we want to audit, or we want to build a report. What do we do with sort of all of this information? These are just some random things I do. Again, if you go back to logs, not necessarily being a system log, it's just a record of an event, right? So Deploy Studio can run scripts. I've got quite a few. I'll run something like a post install script, right, that redirects that output back to a directory that I'm going to make. So after it runs, restarts, I can log in and check it. I've got one that sends an email. It's on the very end of the workflow. Sends me an email, sends me the name of the machine, the IP address, and the timestamp. If I get that email, I sort of know somebody's imaged the machine, but I also know that workflow just completed. You can run scripts with ARD. So if you wanted to view the syslog on a remote machine, you could either do it with SSH, but you could do it with Apple Remote. You could just do a cat of the system log, or you could run that syslog-w5, pull it back. You can do, obviously, centralized logging. There's lots of options. You've got third parties that you don't want to forget about. Monkey, right? Casper, Puppet, Chef, Meraki. They all have dashboards that give you information. They also have their own logging. I would be lost without the logging of Monkey. It's the only way to resolve issues is by going to look. And I'll throw this in with launch daemons. You can do some really interesting stuff with launch daemons. Now, you want to use these kind of sparingly because you don't want 100 launch daemons running on your machines. But there's some interesting ideas here. You can use a watch path to watch a directory. And if something changes in that directory, you can do something about it. You can be notified. So maybe you want to watch the launch daemons folder to see what gets added to this machine's launch daemons. And you can then run a bash script and say, send me an email. Periodically, you can do the same thing, kind of like a cron job, right? So with El Capitan, you can say, watch for these words in system log. And if you find these, send me an email. Now, it's not going to stop it. You could be ungraceful about it and say, if I find installing El Capitan in the applications folder, we're going to get messy and delete some stuff. But mine just watches. If it finds what I'm looking for, it sends me an email, and I know, okay, I need to go look at that machine. Somebody just updated that. I've got scripts that audit Apple Remote. If you use Apple Remote, something you should do time to time is select all your machines, do a Command I, get the panel. It comes up. Under administrative computers, you'll see a list of machines that have Apple Remote access. You should recognize all of those machines. If you don't recognize those machines, that is a machine that has remote access to your clients. There's no easy way to audit that. I've got a script that I use with a launch daemon that pulls that plist out of Apple Remote, converts it to plain text, does some searching, pulls back all the admin computers, throws mine out, gives me a list with a timestamp at 11 o'clock. These are the machines that have access. If I don't recognize them, you go into Apple Remote, you click that admin, you can actually manually remove those machines. If they come back, you want to track those machines down. It's another way of just generating some logs, again, because logs are just things that have happened. They're events. Resources links. We're done. We're there. Slides are on my blog. They should be there. And then there's a bunch of resources links. I'll give you a second to track this. There's a bunch of resources here. There's more. There's PDFs. There's things about auditing and logging. If you want to get more, there's lots and lots of stuff. It's all there. The scripts, the forensic scripts, the collections. My GitHub has scripts written in Python, Ruby, and Bash to collect logs. Whatever you want. So thank you so much. There's 7 or 8 minutes left, so if we've got questions. Cool. Thank you.
Can you just talk about with the centralized logging, the environment you have set up to collect that, data sizes and what kind of machines?
Okay, yeah. So if you're going to do this, what you probably want is support from your network team. I sort of didn't do that. I only do it on my lab machines. I don't do it on end users. If I did it on end users, I would be a little more formal and say, hey, let's set this up. So I just run it on Ubuntu. It's on a Mac Mini. I've got about 150 lab machines that check into it. They haven't squawked about network traffic. I assume it's all good. They're aware of the machine. We're actually implementing one sort of campus-wide for servers and all of that. This was sort of a proof of concept. With the 150 machines, I mean, speeds are good. Like, if you log into the dashboard the first time, it's going to query for like 30 seconds before it gives you back any logs. But
how about like log sizes, storage size on the server?
Oh, it's not bad. So 150 machines, that's been running for over a year. The entire log files are 25 gigs. It's not bad. And you can set that retention too. I mean, I'm keeping them indefinitely because those machines will just get re-imaged, once a year or whatever. But if it was building up too fast, you could just grab those and archive them out somewhere. So there's a question in the back.
Thank you so much for the talk. It was really good. Is there any chance we can get your elk stack search somewhere we can find them? Because I'm working on the same thing on my side.
The what search?
The elk stack, like how did you set it up? I know how to set up,
there's
but
a
just
link.
the search for
yeah,
all
there's a
things.
link in the resources for what I use. It's really
like
easy.
just what search keywords are you trying to find and stuff like that?
Oh,
I know you talked about some, but some of them.
Yeah, so in the slides, there's some of them. there's a what to look for. We did just the keywords. Yeah, I mean, I can probably put something together and just drop it on my
Please, I'm already set it up. I just need that part. That's what I'm struggling.
blog. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One quick thing about Sis Diagnose that you listed off different ways to run it.
Yeah.
There's actually one additional way, especially if the machine is beginning to become incapacitated. Basically, Command, Option, Shift, Control, period. So basically,
Ah,
all your
yes,
modifier
that one.
yeah, all the keys modifiers together with period will just trigger the operating system to do it and
That's
drop
right.
it.
Yes.
on the
yeah, it's
computer.
built in. So I mean, it's already on your machines. Yeah, that's a good point. There's one in the back.
Can you tie the logs into like a SNMP so you have logs of what you're doing and also active monitoring of all the system resources? Like, do people do that?
Do people do that? I would say it depends on what kind of environment you're in. If you have to monitor logs, people are doing that for sure. I don't technically have to monitor logs. I don't have to run a log server. I don't have to redirect my scripts to a location. I do that. Nobody's ever told me that I've had to.
So have you noticed, is there like any correlation like CPU usage and then you see like do you do that other monitoring so that you can see that's why this log file is getting, is there any?
Not that I've noticed.
Okay.
Most of the time, all that stuff is happening. I mean, the user doesn't know, the machine doesn't know. Logs, that's the beauty sort of logs is it's just text, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to spike your RAM or your CPU or anything like that. Okay. So even as those logs build up on the local machine, if you change your retention policy, you're not creating extra work for the machine to do. It's just building more and more of them instead of deleting them. So,
Thank you.
yeah. I think that's it. All right. Thank you so much, guys.